Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to chapter 2. We talked about the general information about UAE in chapter 1. Now, this is a summary of chapter 2 that we have discussed in the class. You need to focus on major points. That's why I'm recording this video to you guys so that you can revise at home. So this is an ancient history of the UAE. Let's start. Now, the first human habitation appeared in UAE was before 6,000 years ago. So in this area of the world, there were people actually in UAE living in the country 6,000 years ago. Okay, the ruins that actually showed, ruins means like houses, old houses, and maybe ships or pots, something like people used to eat, use it to eat. Now they were found in Delma, Marwah in Abu Dhabi. Okay, the trade of copper, because copper, UAE was so famous in copper, and it was taken from the Hajar Mountains. And the trade actually were there like 3000 BC. Okay. Now there were ruins in Maliha in Sharjah. So we found ruins in Delma and Marwah in Abu Dhabi, and ruins in Maliha in Sharjah. It indicated in Sharjah, it indicated that actually there were like commercial ties with Greece in the 3rd century. BC. Now, by the 1st century, Abu Dhabi had caravans traffic between Syria and other cities to Iraq. So Abu Dhabi had caravan traffic from here to Syria and Iraq. Okay, what do you think they actually sold? They sold, let's say, agriculture products. Maybe camels, goats, and for sure fish, and pearl, because UAE has been always famous with pearl and fishing. Okay, now again, let's continue with the historical part of UAE. There was a sea trade. I think there was a port in Oman. There was a port in Oman. Oman is the old name of Al-Qawain. Between Al-Qawain and India, there was trading system, and they were selling fish, they were selling pearls, and other products, maybe sheep and camels. Now Chinese merchants came to Liba for trading as well. And then Liwa was the focus of the economic and social activity for the Baniyas before the 16th century, and we'll go back to this later. Now, in 1790s, the town of Abu Dhabi had become an important pearling center, and this was actually the modern establishing of Abu Dhabi. And Al Nahyan family moved there from Liwa. So Al Nahyan family lived in Liwa, and then they moved to Abu Dhabi. And Abu Dhabi became the center of pearling center, and afterwards it became the capital of the country. Now, and that was in 1790s. Okay. Okay, the advent of Islam. The UAE people, like Emirates, Oman, and Yemen, they converted to Islam without war, and they converted to Islam in 630. In the year 630. Now, after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there was a major battle of the Rida Wars, they call it, and it was fought at Liba, resulting in the defeat of the non-Muslims and the triumph of Islam. In 637, Julfar, which is the old name of Ras Al Khaimah, was used as a staging post for the conquest of Iran. Okay. The arrival of Portuguese. We know that Portuguese and the British they occupied UAE in the past. Now, the Portuguese, they came actually, they dominated the Arabian Gulf, mostly in UAE and some parts of Oman in the 16th century. But their power faded with time and they couldn't survive because of the resistance of Al-Qawasim. Al-Qawasim used to fight them all the time and they resisted them. So the Portuguese could not survive in this area. Now, what reasons motivated Portuguese to occupy the Gulf? Why did Portuguese come for this area anyways? Now, this is the first and major thing is taking revenge from the Islamic State because UAE became a Muslim country in the year 630, if you remember. Now, we talked about it on that slide in 630, right? Okay, now number two, because it's a strategic position of the Arabian Gulf. I told you about UAE is bordered by Hormuz Strait. So it's a very famous area and it's very strategic position, right? Number three, because it's a coastal area like UAE and Oman, it's a coastal area. So actually to facilitate the imports and exports from and to Europe. And if you remember, we talked about Omaniyah, where there was a port in Omaniyah, which is Al-Qawain, was used for trade and export, for export and import to India, right? Okay. Now, to control and dominate the navigation of the region as well, so they could control the ships that come through the Gulf and the Indian Ocean as well, right? Okay, to exploit the resources available in the region. Now, there was no oil at the time, but there was fish and agriculture, there was sheep, camels, and pearls, copper, if you remember. I told about it like in the previous slides. So they exploited these resources. They actually stole them, let's say. And that's why the Portuguese stayed in the country, or actually they came to the country. Now they faded, Portuguese faded, their power faded, and they left. They pulled themselves back because of Al-Qawasim resistance. They resisted them. Okay, now when Portuguese got weak, the British took advantage of it. They took advantage of it and they kicked them out and they took control. Now, how did the Portuguese succeed to support their influence in the Gulf area in UAE? Because of the internal conflicts among the Emirates. If you remember, like the Emirates was not one country in the past. They were like different tribes and different places. So there was an internal conflict between these Emirates, and that's why the British, they took advantage of it and they could take over. Now, imposed fines and taxes and controlled the economic activities, including fishing and trading. Economic activities, of course, because it's in the Hormuz Strait. So, and there was fishing, there was pearl, and the other resources I told you about, and copper and stuff. And they actually made fines and taxes to the ships that's passing by, and to the people themselves inside UAE. They had to pay money to do trading in other places. Number three, they enforced several treaties that allowed them to control the area. All right, so that it was a peaceful place. Let's say they wanted peace for themselves, so they had treaties. They established many airports, and military bases to ease communication. To ease communication, as long as we have military bases, it means that they had to control the area and control the people, right? And to ease the communication among the military bases and the airports and the army. Okay, now the emergence of the tribal power in the Arabian Gulf. Now the British succeeded to gain power over the sea and they kicked the Portuguese, as I said before, and that was in 1625. in the year 1625. Now, at the beginning of the 19th century, Benias tribes